Cycle, noun. A series of events that are regularly repeated in the same order. Clash Royale matches run on a cycle lasting 3 minutes if you don't go into overtime. There's a certain archetype of deck that takes advantage of this card cycle, and if you've played Clash Royale at all, you would know what I'm talking about. Cycle decks are decks that have an elixir cost of about 3.0 and under, and take advantage of the game's cycle. An example of this is the infamous 2.6 cycle. I will now demonstrate some of the common thoughts someone going against 2.6 will think. How did he defend that? How does he have another cannon? And most importantly, I'm gonna kill a family of 4. Common thoughts for a 2.6 player are, cannon go here and musketeer go here and win. Now to why you actually clicked on the video. Cycle is a very strong and complex archetype that will always be good no matter how many nerfs a card might get. Why? Because the cycle makes it good, not the cards. That's why I recommend any beginner to learn cycle decks, because they will always be good. I've split this video into 5 sections, and there will be chapters in the description if you want to skip to a certain part, but I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. So let's get started. First up, we have the deck you're gonna use. Before you can play Cycle, you gotta choose your deck. Cycle decks normally revolve around a building, a strong defensive unit, cheap win con, spells to help your win con, and cheap cycle cards. Look at 2.6 for example. It has all the important things a cycle deck should have. Now, what deck should you play? Do you want to play Pig Cycle and spam EQs, or do you want to play 2.6 and be a little... Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. The cycle decks I recommend are Pig Cycle, Hog EQ, and Balloon Cycle. If you don't want to play an exact cycle deck, you can play something like Splash Red or Minor NATO. They have a quick cycle, but they're not exactly cycle decks. Before you jump into pulling off crazy defenses with decks, we need to understand how the card cycle works in the game. Because there are 8 cards in a deck, and you can have 4 in your hand at a time, that means there are 4 cards that you cannot play. When you play a card, if you want to play that card again, you need to play another 4 cards to get back to it. Think of it as a line where after the first person goes, they go to the back of the line and the whole line moves forward. Cycle decks take advantage of this by having cheap cards in your deck, so you only have to spend about 4 or 5 elixir to get to the cycle, to get to the card you want instead of the 15 to 20 with a non-cycle deck. This also makes it so you can cycle back quickly instead of having to wait for the elixir to generate again. Now it's time to talk about 3-card cycle. If you have a champion in your deck, then you can have it. So basically, what it is, since you can only have 1 champion on the field at a time, that also means you can have another champion in your rotation. So that means it only takes 3 cycles to get to the card you want to play instead of the usual 4. Only while a champion is on the map. Now that you have your deck and understand the cycle of the game, we can finally talk about defense. Is the most important part about cycle decks. If you don't have a good defense, then you will lose every single game. Your defense revolves around 3 things: a strong defensive card, a building, and Ice Spirit and Skeletons. If your deck doesn't have either of those, go back to the deck making section and try again. What you want to do is place your building in the middle of the arena, your defensive card around your king tower, then Ice Spirit and Skeletons to keep your building alive. That's it. That's your entire defense. This is for something like P.E.K.K.A, and you can use less stuff for less expensive stuff, but this is your entire defense right there. You also don't want to do it the same way every time. Instead, put your defensive card near your princess tower and building up high to prevent getting predicted. Understanding the defense will help you win games, and practice will make perfect, so be sure to practice your deck before you actually try to climb with it. Attacking is probably the least important part of cycle decks. Why, you may ask? You can easily win games by just spell cycling on the tower. You don't need to use your win condition at all. The most important part of attacking, though, is predictions. Say you go in for your Hog Rider and you know your opponent has Skarmy and Cycle. Try to log before he plays this Skarmy, try and kill it. Now, if you predict him, good job. You take half his tower, or force out another response. But if he Skarmies after your log, and you still get a shot in tower and you can defend the Skarmy easily, it's a win-win. You can do the same thing with a building too with Fireball or Earthquake. Most of the time you can get away with a lone hog the bridge, but what you want to do is support it with something like a Gobsign or Ice Golem. Finally, we have some general tips you should implement in your games. You generally want to not go for big pushes in single elixir, because when they counter your push, you're going to have a big push you can't defend because you don't have any elixir. Also, if your win condition can't break through, no matter what, just focus on defense and spell cycle, and you can win easily. For example, I've lost so many games because my opponent can just easily counter my win condition and I can't break through. But if you just defend and spell cycle, that should mitigate that. For my last tip is for double elixir, you just want to spam your opponents with your win condition. Just cycle your cheap cards and spam your win condition to outcycle their counter, and eventually you will overwhelm them. Just make sure you don't overcommit. This was my guide for cycle decks. If this helped you in any way, or you just enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. And with that, I'll see you later. Bye.